the meeting. Go ahead. Okay, thank you, Mike. So we're calling to order the regular meeting for Monday, April 10th at 7 p.m. of the Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission. We will start with the call to order seating of alternates. At this point, Mike, can you confirm that Alex has not joined?
Alex is here.
I'm
Alex,
here,
thank
Mike.
you.
I'm here.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, very good. So we have a full membership. Doug and Luther, obviously you are welcome to partake in the meeting and hearings, but not as voting. And we'll go with just the commission. No alternates to be sat. Let me just check also. John Calarese. John, are you on?
I don't see anybody with that name, Joe.
Okay, thank you. All right, very good. Looking for the approval of the minutes from March 13th to March 13th, 2013. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Jerry,
Second, Jeff.
seconded by Jeff Schillinger. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. Thank you. For public comments for items not currently listed on the agenda, is there anyone wishing to have public comment? I see hands up already. Should I reach out to those folks? I'll start with Dr. Susan Boley. Dr. Boley, do you have any public comments besides what's already on the agenda or for the hearings slated?
I'm sorry, Mike, I was looking for the mute button, Jeff. My comments are related to the text amendment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is this the time to talk or later?
No, this is not the time. This is for something that is not currently on the agenda.
Okay, no worries.
No, thank you. I have iPad up next. I don't know who this is.
This is Mike McGlaris, Mr. Chairman. My comments as well, text
Oh,
amendment.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Linda Gagny,
Text amendment, please.
thank you. Mr. Rudowitz? You're muted.
Text amendment, please.
Okay. Mr. Templeton, or excuse me, Ms.
Ms.
Templeton.
Templeton. Text amendment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kendall,
Yeah, text amendment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Pesh,
The text amendment, thank you.
thank you. Ms. Acebo,
Yes, I have something that's not text amendment. They should take 5 minutes or less. On February 23rd, I sent an email via Mike to the Ashford Building Department, Board of Selectmen, and the Planning and Zoning Commission. I did not receive an answer, so I'm going to ask my question now. I've been passing a burned out house across from the fire station on Route 89 for 4 years now. I believe the address is 69 Westford Road. It's not only an eyesore, but it would seem to me to be a magnet for kids to explore with potentially dire consequences. There are also a number of apparently junked vehicles, and the trash from inside the house spills out across the property, feet from the Mount Hope River. In the zoning regulations, I found a definition of abandonment: the discontinued use of any structure or land for a period of 3 years. A structure shall be considered abandoned if it's fully or partially demolished. The use of a structure or land shall be considered abandoned if the activity or operation ceases. However, I can't find anything in the zoning regulations about what the town can do about an abandoned property. I'd like to know why the town hasn't remedied the burned out house situation. Who has the authority to force the cleanup of this land that sits right next to the Mount Hope River at one of the gateways to town, and ironically, right across from our fire station? That's my question.
Thank you very much, Christine. And your letter, you said, went to the Selectman's office as well as the CEO and Planning and Zoning
Yep, and building department. Nobody answered me.
and the Building Department. And the date of that letter was February 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, we will take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff, this is Dick Williams. I had asked a similar question a couple of years back, and at that time, the response was it was not the responsibility of Planning and Zoning Commission to address abandoned properties. That would fall more likely on the selectmen.
That seems strange.
Thank you, Dick.
Well, if you look at the regulations, there's nothing in the regulations that talks about planning and zoning and acting upon that. And this was, Ken, I'm not sure if you issued the opinion, or maybe your predecessor did, but it was something that was asked because I think a number of us were concerned about the property.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Dick. Yes, it does not necessarily, we don't have regs that fall under any type of blight or abandonment regarding actions we can do, but we can forward it on to the proper appropriate office for you. Thank you. Mr. Evans, do you have anything that regarding something not currently on the agenda?
Text amendment.
Text amendment. And Mr. Parks, I'm going to assume your text amendment also? Okay. And as we get going into the meeting, if everyone could be sure to be on mute during the meeting until called upon, we appreciate that. Going on to bills, seeing no more public comment, we'll move on to bills. And looks like Alex and Mike, we had one for the Chronicle for the warning of hearings.
That's correct.
Okay, very good for 46112. For correspondence, I do have a correspondence we received on March 15th. And this was from Michael Turgeon, who's the supervising director of the Wyndham Waterworks. And I'll read his comments as follows. Again, Wednesday, March 15th. Hello, Mr. D'Amato. It came to my attention a previous employee of Wyndham Waterworks made comments at one of your meetings, which are noted incorrectly in the attached minutes. It would be best to revise those minutes at your next meeting to clarify that Kenny Deal, who lives in Ashford, was a previous watershed inspector for WWW. The minutes currently state Mr. Kenny Ashford, a watershed inspector with Wyndham Waterworks, noted that Wyndham Water is some of the cleanest in the state. The structure probably would be heated with fuel or propane, as there is no gas in this area. Its wastewater, septic system runoff and spills will bring big impacts to the area. Wyndham Waterworks should be asked to consult on the proposed changes. Mr. Turgeon is asking just a simple revision of Mr. Kenny Ashford, a previous watershed inspector with Wyndham Waterworks, et cetera, et cetera. We had already approved those minutes, but what we can do is note in these minutes that that correction was made for this meeting in April. So Valerie, you should be able to capture that. We're good. Any other correspondence, Alex, that you're aware of?
No.
Okay, very good. We will move on now to public hearing section. We will start the continued hearing for PZ-23-1 text amendment application, Article 300-14 definitions, Article 300-19 interstate interchange development zone. Applicant Campanelli Rodalskis LM Acquisitions LLC, and Ashford Realty Trust LLC. Again, this is continued from March 13th. I do have an opening statement. One of the statements I will make is that the chat room function is not available and will not be available during the hearing. So anything put into the chat room will not be recognized. So again, as in the previous meeting of March 13th, I just want to thank all the citizens of Ashford who took the time to share their comments on the application regarding a text amendment to the Ashford zoning regulations currently before the commission. Those comments are posted on the Town of Ashford website in written format, and comments made in the hearings are recorded as video. I know I speak for all the commission members when I say thank you for your confidence and trust in us to represent Ashford. Again, if this is redundant for all of you that have been on the previous two sessions, I'm sorry. I tried to spice it up a little bit with some changes. The public hearing will be held under the assumption of decorum, respect, and civility for all in attendance. The commission is charged with the responsibility as officials elected by the citizens of Ashford to listen, review pertinent information, and evaluate the input from the hearing in rendering a decision on the application before it. I remind everyone that by state statute, there is no process for a town meeting or town vote on the issue at hand. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide members of the public with an opportunity to learn more about the submitted application and to provide comments on that application to the commission. Public statements made to the commission during the public hearing are valuable to the commission, provided they bear upon specific issues before the commission as they pertain to the application. At no time prior to deliberations on the application is a commission member to offer their support or opposition to the application. This is very important. If you wish to provide substantive comment today, please be sure your comments are directly related to the application. For a text amendment change to the current regulations that apply to the Interstate Interchange Development Zone, or IID, that include increases to the current list of allowable special permitted uses and changes to developmental standards for building and structures. There is no current application or site plan submitted before PZC for a special permit or proposed structure for placement in the IID zone with the requested changes currently identified. If you have comment specific to the revised application submitted prior to the February 13th hearing, we will accept that comment as it pertains to the revisions. And to that end, in order to move the process forward and be as efficient as possible, if you have submitted written public comment prior to this hearing continuation today, please do not take the time to read us your submitted comments. It is already part of the public record. Our intent tonight is not to provide a forum for popular agreement from the public on testimony that has already been provided to the commission. Topics such as rural nature, watershed, and tax base are not areas for further comment. We simply wish to gain any remaining pertinent comments from the public that offer significant input for the commission to consider. All submitted public written comments have been or will be reviewed by the commission members prior to any action. Your remarks should be aimed to provide evidence specifically related to the amendments proposed to the zoning regulations or to raise questions to help identify where more information may be necessary. If you have already spoken at one of the other two previous hearing dates, please allow others who might wish to be heard and would be speaking for the first time in this process. Hearing management. All comments are to be directed to the commission and more specifically, the chair of the commission. The public hearing process is not a dialogue or back and forth between the commission and the members of the public or the applicant and the members of the public. No one is to comment unless recognized by the chair. This includes commission members, the applicant, and the members of the public seeking to comment. In the best interest of time and efficiency, we ask that you keep your initial comments to 3 minutes or less. This time limit will be strictly enforced for all speakers. If your comments stray from the text amendment issue at hand, your time will be shortened. There will be a visual timer that we'll be using. It'll be set for 3 minutes. It'll give you a green light at the 3-minute mark all the way down to 30 seconds left. Then it will turn red and you'll have 30 seconds for summation before your time is up. Please clearly identify yourself and your address. And again, we'll run the hearing simply with having the applicant speak to us first with any updates that they have regarding their application. The public comment and questions to the commission will take place. We'll then have questions and requests for clarification from the commission and town staff, and then final comments from the applicant. That's a lot of words, that's a lot of direction, but I thank you for your attention to it and following proper process and procedure. So at that point, I will reach out to Attorney Nuff to open the session for the applicant's comment. And again, I don't think we have to go over a lot of what previously have. I'm hoping you're just going to be going over some of the updates and revisions and any information you have to, again, update us on submissions and things that you've seen. So,
Okay.
Attorney Nuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Nuff, 147 Broad Street, Milford, Connecticut. On behalf of the applicants, I hope you all had a very pleasant holiday weekend. Really nothing more to add. You know, we adhere to our self-imposed rule that we would get any new submissions in by last Wednesday, which we did, which is really just a response to some of the comments at the last hearing. We have nothing substantive, you know, to offer tonight. No changes to the regulations, nothing else, no other evidence, you know, to support the regulation amendments. I think what our goal is this evening is to, with the chair's terrific aid in terms of, you know, managing the public comment, is to, you know, hear the remaining public comments and then to offer our thoughts in closing. And obviously, if the commission wants additional information from us, we have our entire team here available. But I think we want to just get through the public comment portion, and then we're happy to address all that.
Thank you, Attorney Nuff. Okay, with that very short opening statement, we thank you very much. And we will move on to the public comment section. I will start again at the top with Dr. Susan Bowley.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read a statement. I already emailed it today. My name is Dr. Susan Bowley, and I reside at 630 Westford Road, Ashford, Connecticut, on Route 89. I'm a mechanical and biomedical engineer, a small business owner, professor, and forensic expert witness. I strongly oppose the Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission text amendment application for modifications of the Ashford zoning regulations, Article 4D, Interstate Interchange Development Zone, IID, related to Articles 300-14 and 300-19, Planning and Zoning 23-1. My parents purchased our family property in 1966 when I was just 6 months old, over 56 years ago. I grew up in Ashford, attended Ashford Elementary School, E.O. Smith High School, and the University of Connecticut prior to moving away from the area to pursue my career in engineering. Now that I'm retired from the federal government, I have moved back home to Ashford and now live with my mother, Joan Bowley. During my career, I have lived in both California and Maryland in large suburban areas. I have witnessed firsthand the destruction of the environment, including destruction of native plants, wildlife, and drinking water, all in the name of economic progress. I have returned to Ashford due to the quality of life here. The rural character, low crime, low commercial development, low pollution, and quiet peacefulness here. This text amendment application is just the first step towards destroying the rural character of Ashford, the main attraction to living here. In fact, this text amendment directly conflicts with the current Ashford zoning regulations, indicating, quote, this zone is intended to project the image and character of an attractive and distinctive gateway into the town of Ashford, unquote, Article 4D, and the current Ashford Plan of Conservation and Development. If this application is passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, there will be nothing to stop expansion of the environmental destruction, including the inland wetlands surrounding the area being considered for development of the commercial warehouse in the IID zone. The State of Connecticut Department of Energy Environmental Protection, DEEP, will simply enforce the current very weak laws related to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act, IWWA, laws which are not strong enough to preserve the rural nature of Ashford. The Willimantic Reservoirs watershed, headwaters of the Mount Hope River, and the start of the Fenton River watershed, which provide drinking water to thousands of residents, would be directly adversely impacted by the proposed text amendments. I personally do not believe any speculative tax reductions warrant our town of Ashford to start down this path of environmental destruction, as has been done in Putnam with the ash disposal landfill. The ash disposal.
Ms. Bowley, you've exceeded the 3 minutes. I'm asking you to wrap up, please.
Okay, I just have one more paragraph, basically. The ash landfill approvals resulted in Putnam having the lowest taxes in the state of Connecticut. In my view, there is simply no amount of money that would be worth this environmental destruction. In addition, the increased tractor-trailer traffic on Route 89 in Ashford, which is already too high and dangerous, will undoubtedly be dramatically increased. I have concerns with the dramatic increase in pollution, roadway runoff, smog, and noise, but also the dramatic increase in hazards for pedestrians, including children. In summary, I strongly oppose the text amendment and highly recommend the Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission to vote no. I also encourage the Planning and Zoning Commission to strengthen the current zoning regulation to prevent future similar applications for modification to the IID zone, creating irreversible negative impact on our drinking water, forests, wildlife, safety, and general quality of life in Ashford. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bowley.
Thank you.
Moving on, please, those of you looking to speak, please try to keep your comments below the 3 minutes so we can move on effectively and efficiently. iPad, if you could identify yourself, your name and address, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Margulies, I forgot it was you. Thank you.
Yes, Mike McGlaris, Chairman. Good evening, and thank you for recognizing me. Mr. Chairman, my position is simple. This text amendment should be voted down. I'd like to take a moment, though, and tell you why and what I see coming. And what I see coming is not pretty. What I see coming. I'm sorry?
No, that wasn't me. Please make sure that the your mic is muted. Anyone attending?
What I see coming is not pretty, Mr. Chairman, and it's based on 46 years of experience in the public liability insurance experience. The town of Ashford is going to be sued. The town will be in litigation for years. I want to make that point. You and your fellow commissioners will be deposed. Every bit of my business experience tells me that this is on our horizon, unfortunately. This is a fight the citizens of Ashford did not ask for, but we will not back down. If you reject the text amendment, the applicant will sue our town. These are people who will stop at nothing. Proof of that is that at our last meeting, Mr. Chairman, counsel for the applicant attempted to malign the reputation and objectivity of a commissioner publicly. Gee, Mr. Chairman, what a strategy for success is that? If you vote in favor of the text amendment, you still will be sued. This time it will be by some of your fellow citizens in Ashford. Is that a threat, Mr. Chairman? No, it is not. It is a simple prediction based on almost half a century of business experience. This gift from these out-of-towners who do not live here, who do not drive down our roads, who do not know us or care to know us, is the gift that will keep on giving. These are the people who categorize the Nipmuc Sanctuary as, open quote, vacant land owned by the state, close quote. You and your fellow commissioners should never, repeat, never, make your decisions fearing the possibility of litigation that would be grossly unfair to you. You should make the decisions based on facts and based on common welfare for our town. But make no mistake, whatever decisions you make will result in litigation. Whatever decision you make will cause claims to be filed with the town's public liability insurers, and the result will be a catastrophe. At some point, the town's attorney will be standing in front of a person wearing a black robe. He will be justifying the decision you made, whatever it will be. A judge will look at the facts presented by those opposed to the text amendment, and he or she will make a decision based on those facts. Scientific facts that prove this project means the death of our town. Meanwhile, Mr. Chairman, the legacy is what you stand for. The question that will be asked is, did you stand for Ashford, for our way of life, for our values, for our peace and quiet? I hope, Mr. Chairman, that the answer is yes. Vote down this text amendment and let the chips fall where they may. Let this be a legacy you and everyone can look back on with pride. If you vote this text amendment down, I'll be the first citizen to cut a check to help pay down the town's liability policy deductible. I have witnesses to that effect. Mr. Chairman, let this go. This must not stand. This is the death of our town. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Margulies. I would just like to say, based on the fact of the last two sets of comments, the items that are being brought up to us are not in the realm of what we should be considering on this application. The application, as I said in my preamble, my opening statement, the items that we are looking at have to do with the text amendment changes when it comes to warehousing, distribution, and research centers, as well as the structural formation, the structural limitations of buildings in the IID zone. Those are really what we need to look at, also in regards to the POCD, as well as the regulations. Discussions on this, again, as I said, we're not looking for a popular vote at this point, or how someone feels or anything like that. We really need to deal with specific issues when it comes to the items that we can consider. And just as I said earlier on, everything from rural nature and watershed are not current, as well as tax base, are not current issues for us to be looking at when it comes to this text amendment. And again, please, when called upon, please keep your comments 2 to 3 minutes. Don't go beyond. We have a number of people to get to, and we have a lot of work to do tonight. So that being said, I'll go to Linda Gagney.
Linda Gagney, 156 Horse Hill Road. And Chairman Silversmith, I would like to try to keep this as brief as possible. My intent in speaking is not to speak for or against the proposal, but rather to the process. And I want to thank all the commissioners for having this process that has turned out to be a very educational process for many of us. And I thank you for having it via Zoom, even though it may have knocked out some people, the opportunity that it has provided for many of us to listen in and to learn. The last meeting, I think there was 270 people at the meeting or more. So, I mean, we see a lot of impassioned statements, but through this process, when I started, I did not know what a text amendment was. So I did a little bit of research to be able to say, what is a text amendment? And as you were stating, this process is only for a change in the section of the zoning code that applies to this zone only, if I'm stating it correctly. And so to isolate all the comments for and against and say, what is this process about? It's to change one section of the code for one zone. That there's only one IID zone in Ashford, which I had to look up. What does that mean? Which you have stated, it's an interstate interchange development zone. So this applies here only. And if I understand your process correctly, currently the zone's permitted use would allow for possibly 4 250,000 square foot buildings with the appropriate ratio of open space for each building. So what these applicants, I think, are asking for is to have one footprint, not 4 spread out on an area, but one that totals 1.1 million square feet with a higher height. So, you know, some of the process made it so confusing, not by the commissioners, but by the comments that came in, that you, again, could isolate what is this process really about. So, you know, there's been some criticisms and I think some statements that they're not accurate, you know, and we've heard from unions and things, but not once have I heard that the developers have said, we're bringing in Amazon or we're bringing in whatever. They have said, we cannot yet we can't say who our tenants are until this text amendment is approved, and then we'll have a commitment or not a commitment. I think maybe that's the process. And so, and as I understand it, these developers have not made proposals to neighboring towns. They're not the same developers. So I just wanted to state that in the record, and I'm sure the commission or Mike D'Amato will tell me if it's not correct afterwards. And that way, I think it's easy, in my mind, it's easier to isolate what is this process truly about. So if the text amendment does pass, then the process would start that they would present what the plan is. Up until now, there's been a lot of conjecture, I think incorrectly, what the plan is for who the tenants are. So I believe am I up to my 3 minutes? I'll stop.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I can see the time. I thought everybody could see the time that's up here. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
see it right there. Thank you. I'm sorry
Okay.
I went over.
That's okay. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being aware of the time also. Mr. Rudowitz.
Yes. My turn. Okay. I will say to start, I am opposed to this text amendment. My wife is opposed. My daughter is opposed. We are all opposed to this. In accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes, when the commission deliberates on this application, it must consider the plan of conservation and development and the zoning map when making its decision. The definition of must is clear to all of us. The definition of consider is to think about and be drawn towards a course of action. Article 300-19 in the IID zone A-1B, proposed development must demonstrate that there will be compatibility with adjacent residential development and that it will not negatively impact adjacent development. That right there to me is a non-starter. How can anybody, any attorney representing anybody possibly try to say it will not negatively impact adjacent development? Okay, the next point, A-1D. This zone is intended to project the image of an attractive and distinctive gateway into the town of Ashford. Drive through any industrial park, whether it be in Manchester, Tolland, Vernon. Is that what we want as a distinctive and attractive gateway to the town of Ashford? I think not. A2, the further purpose of the IID zone is to promote the economic viability and operational sustainability of agricultural business in the town of Ashford. Specifically, these regs are intended to A, address food and fiber needs, B, enhance environmental quality and the natural resources based upon which the agricultural economy depends, C, make the most efficient use of non-renewable resources and on-farm resources and integrate, when appropriate, natural biological cycles. D, sustain the economic viability of farm operations. And E, put in place an agricultural friendly community. It goes on to design guidelines. It goes on to say design guidelines should relate to the neighbors building and the rural character of Ashford. The zoning commission needs to follow the existing zoning. This is not a simple request for a resident for a setback variance on a garage to be built within 100 feet of a wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. This request for this zone change will impact every property owner and resident of Ashford. I asked the commission to pause and ask for a town vote on such a major change to the character of Ashford. Maybe most homeowners want to change the rural character, maybe most do not. Let's work together and find out what the townspeople really want the commission to do. I'm going to read from an article in the newspaper today in Bloomberg News. The headline says, U.S. warehouse capital faces a slowdown. Southern California's Inland Empire, the warehousing mecca.
Mr. Rudowitz, I'm
Yes.
sorry, you've exceeded the time here, and I know it seems like you got shorter than other, but I'm trying to truncate them all to the 3-minute limitation. Thank you for your input. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Templeton, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good
My
evening.
name is Terry Templeton. I'm the owner of 32 acres of land between Hillside Road and Lead Mine Road in Ashford. I'm also a resident of Ashford and reside at 237 Hillside Road. I'm opposed to the passage of the proposed text amendment. I'd like to respond to one point in particular as presented in Campanelli's postcard, quote, fact versus fiction, close quote, which my family received in the mail this past week. Specifically, I'd like to address the comment that states, quote, majority of traffic will use adjacent I-84 exit and have no impact on local Ashford roads, close quote. I'm not sure how I would take comfort in that statement, even if I did believe it was verifiable and factual, given the fact that even less than 50% of 1,000 trips a day would be an unthinkable impact on our secondary and tertiary roads in rural Ashford. As someone who lives on one of those tertiary roads and witnesses an average of several times a month the appearance of 18-wheelers passing in front of my home, I submit to you that the applicant is wrong. In the past week alone, I've watched and felt 2 tractor trailers rumble down our road in the early hours of the morning, only to realize that their truck app has led them to the Yale Forest. Their only choice at that point is to engage the backup signal back up and turn around in my neighbor's driveway, or drive back in reverse the length of the road. A road that at some points barely accommodates the passage of two cars going in opposite directions. Not only is this a safety hazard, but it's a serious disruption to the people who live here. But then I believe that's a fundamental problem with this proposal in general. The people making the proposal don't live here. As to I-84, Campanelli implies that the anticipated heavy truck traffic on and off eastbound and westbound 84 will have no impact on our town. I can't help but imagine exit ramps lined up for miles with tractor trailers on both sides, as many of us are trying to get to and from our homes. The applicant is ignoring the truth with respect to the scale of the traffic on the horizon, both during construction and post-construction. The applicants don't live here. They don't see what's happening now, and they would never need to endure it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Templeton. Mr. Pesh.
Thank you. My name's Stephen Petch. I'm an Ashford resident. I live at 148 Sekar Road. As background, I have over 20 years experience in research and teaching on geochemistry and rock weathering. I hold a bachelor's degree in geoscience from Penn State University and a PhD in geochemistry from Yale University. I'm offering information relevant to the text amendment to help the Planning and Zoning Commission in their decision. I'll start with a simple statement about the geology of our town. The IID zone sits on the rock formation that's implicated in crumbling home foundations in Ashford and many surrounding towns. This formation contains a mineral called pyrrhotite. Here's why this matters for the construction of buildings in the IID. The area has high topographic relief. This means the land is not already level, but sloped. When constructing a building on a slope, the builders create a level platform. As such, excavation into hillsides is needed on the upslope side, and filling in is needed on the downslope side. Because of the slope, a very large building built on one contiguous large level platform requires substantially more excavation and filling in than several smaller platforms do, even if the total footprints are equal. A large building's excavation would need to cut deeper into the upslope sides of hills and would require fill to be piled higher on downslope sides. This means that in the IID, a level platform for a 1.1 million square foot building requires excavating deeply into this pyrrhotite bearing rock to a degree that the 250,000 square foot buildings allowed by the current zoning regulations do not. Excavation creates new cracks and fractures in the bedrock. If constructed as a balance site, this broken up rock is used as fill. If it's not retained on site, then the rock's trucked away and potentially repurposed by unsuspecting builders and property owners. It's for exactly these reasons that the Connecticut DEP issued 2019 guidance on evaluating potential hydrogeologic impacts associated with blasting and development to address the adverse effects of pyrrhotite. Pyrrhotite in newly fractured rock and fill slowly reacts with air and groundwater. This releases iron sulfate acidity into the fill under building sites. Pyrrhotite, moreover, commonly contains minor amounts of copper, cobalt, nickel, lead, and arsenic that are also released when pyrrhotite reacts. Leveling ground for a very large building in the IID would involve moving a very large volume of pyrrhotite-bearing rock, priming it for reaction in newly created fractures and fills. Issues resulting from excavating this bedrock and using it in construction in the IID may not be revealed for a decade or more, but it can include buckling, settling of level surfaces, retaining walls and foundations, iron and other metal contamination, and acid release. The impacts caused by construction projects on pyrrhotite-bearing bedrock are not covered under existing site design regulations and guidelines. Then again, the impacts of pyrrhotite in concrete aggregate were similarly not covered by regulations, and now home foundations are crumbling at great personal and financial costs throughout our region. For these reasons, construction of very large buildings in the IID with their very large footprints for deep excavation and large piles of fill sourced from crushed pyrrhotite-bearing rock will prove problematic. The proposed zoning amendment to allow such large buildings should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pesh. Mr. Evans.
I am John Evans. I live at 826 Westford Road here in Ashford. I recently moved into this area And I am already concerned about the traffic here on Route 89. I have listened to and commend the thoughtful comments of those who have spoken before me. I realize that this is a change that we need to make to our zoning laws in order to prevent the building of this proposed warehouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I know he's spoken before. I'm trying to see those that maybe have not, but I'm going to go with Mr. Parks.
Good evening, Jim Parks. Excuse me. 352 Billings Road, Summers, here tonight on behalf of Keep Ashford Rural. Earlier today, I submitted a report by Charles Vedich Associates, as well as other data on the noise generated by these types of facilities. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration requires ear protection for workers exposed to noise levels of 85 decibels and above. The research is clear. Exposure to 85 decibels of noise, even for a couple hours, causes damage, both to hearing and other medical issues. Hearing loss, like veterans experience when they leave the battlefield, is the most obvious, but there are many other issues. One single tractor trailer generates 100 decibels of noise. Now, though this is only 15 decibels higher than what the federal government requires ear protection, hearing tables are logarithmic. So 100 decibels is actually 3 times as loud as 85 decibels. And the hearing protection is required for sound that is one third the amount that the residents of Ashford will have to hear with tractor trailers. And attached to each one of those tractor trailers will be a backup alarm. Backup alarms are louder than tractor trailers. They come in at 120 decibels. 120 decibels is 16 times louder than 70 decibels, which is a vacuum cleaner. 110 decibels, which is lower than a backup alarm, is the human pain threshold for sound. So the residents of Ashford will endure sound beyond the human pain threshold. Hundreds of trucks backing up, either simultaneously or one after another. Really, what's worse? Hundreds of trucks, hundreds of backup alarms, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That level and frequency of sound is equivalent to a battlefield at wartime. OSHA is going to protect the workers, but nothing is going to protect the Ashford residents. Ashford has no noise ordinance. If the developer tells you that there are ample provisions to protect the residents, he hasn't read the regulation. No noise regulation, no protection for Ashford residents. Please don't do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parks. Okay, looks like we're getting into a repeat here. We'll go to Larry Gagg.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Larry Gagg, 179 Varga Road. I've been knocking on doors randomly. Every day that I did that, my experience was that 9 out of 10 households were against the text amendment. My peers who knocked on doors had similar results. I was knocked on a door before I put up a sign to get permission of the resident. 92.5% of the written comments submitted to you for this meeting were also opposed to this text amendment. That's consistent with my data, data from my informal poll of knocking on doors. Last meeting, 270 people attended. This meeting, there's 200 people. I think that should impress you that people are concerned about this issue. I understand that by state statute, you cannot have a referendum, but each of you has to make an individual decision on this amendment. We have codes that were designed for reasonable development to be consistent with our plan for conservation and development. Why should an outside developer be allowed to dictate major changes to these codes? His building size is that he's asking for of 1.1 million square feet is 440% of the current code, which is 250,000 square feet. His height increase from 35 feet to 55 is 157% change in the height. These are major changes to our building code. When you make a decision, I understand the statute doesn't allow you to have a referendum, but commissioners, what criteria are you going to use to make a decision? Are you going to base it on being reelected, or are you going to base it on a moral choice to do the right thing based on how the citizens in this town have shown they feel? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larry. Moving on to Carrie Olson.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just want to just very briefly go back to something that we discussed the last time we were here. And that was the notion that I felt that the changes to the text amendment that was proposed at that time, they were provided at the last minute. I didn't have a chance to really look at them, but felt that it was a substantive change that would require a do-over. So I'm going to say now that while Attorney Nuff and I, as well as Attorney Slater, can agree to disagree on whether the changes are substantive, I am encouraged by the fact that Attorney Slater, hi Ken, did comport with my legal principle that you do not have the right to substantively and fundamentally change a text amendment application in the middle of a public hearing process without proper and due notice. So again, we can agree to disagree on whether this is substantive, but the legal principle that you can just change up a text amendment on a whim, or that the commission can change up a text amendment in a fundamental way during deliberations, I believe Attorney Slater agrees with me on that principle. I also want to point out that our zoning regulations were recently changed in substantive ways just a few years ago. And it was a long and arduous process. It was done by Attorney Slater's predecessor. And the IID zone was created through that process. And that process included public comment, voting, and obviously, ultimately adoption. And so I would just reiterate what Mr. Rudowitz said about the principles that should be applied. The fact that you really do need to consider whether what's being proposed is consistent with those regulatory changes that were accepted by this town. I also want to point out that again, your decision on this is a legislative decision. So you have discretion. The problem is that once you accept these regulatory changes, your scope of review changes to an administrative one. And for that purpose, I want to incorporate, because I still think it's apropos, my March 12th, 2023 memorandum, which deals with the legal principles that guide the commission's decision on this point. I mean, once you agree to this, as long as they meet the regulations, your hands are to some degree tied. And so you need to take this very seriously. Consider the plan of conservation and development, consider the comprehensive zoning plan and what the people in this town voted for as the appropriate uses for that zone. And again, I would just reiterate the criteria that I set forth in my March 12th, 2023 memorandum. And I also want to reiterate, thank you to this commission. You're all volunteers. This has been a long and lengthy process and very late night hearings, and I completely appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Moving on to Kathleen Wood.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Wood. I live at 7 Bevington Road in Ashford. I am actually at my friends and neighbors' house right now, Rockwell and Jessica Schrock. They're at 8 Bevington Road, and I'm speaking on all of our behalves. Something that I wanted to, well, there are a lot of things I wanted to bring up that we've been told are off the table to discuss. But I am very concerned that the stated goal of the zoning regulations for the town of Ashford and the town's 2015 plan of conservation and development, which says that it is, quote, to encourage development in the IID zone in a responsible and thoughtful manner. And we are all very concerned that a lot of this does not appear to be happening in a responsible or thoughtful manner. If these zoning changes were to go through, what would stop this third generation New England company from selling the land in the proposal to another entity entirely? After all, with relaxed standards for land use, that property would likely become more valuable. Without knowing who the proposed user or tenant would be, how do we know that that user would not then demand tax incentives from the town, potentially eating up any ostensible tax boosts that we would get from commercial tax revenue? Why are we supposed to be reassured that this is the first step in a lengthy process by making this change to this amendment? Many of the state agencies that are meant to provide oversight and protections are already overburdened, and how are we meant to trust that these fail-safes will not fail us? The developers have gone to great lengths to put forth what might appear to be a generous and a very reasonable proposition, but the Trojans thought that that horse looked like a really nice gift too. I would really implore you to stop these proposed changes from going any further. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. John Levitt. You're on mute, sir. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Levitt, 194 Old Town Road. I will be brief. I would like to summarize, as of last Wednesday, there were over 430 comments posted to the Planning and Zoning Commission, letters and emails. And as Mr. Gagg said, approximately 93% of those were in opposition. There were also over 1,000 signatures collected on a petition in opposition, and over 200 signs have been placed on properties around town expressing opposition to the amendment. Again, this is a tremendous expression from the residents of this town, and I urge you to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt. Next up, we have Joan, if you would identify yourself. Joan CT.
Hello,
Yes, hello.
I live on 341 Farns Road. My name is Dr. Thompson, and I have to say I'm so impressed by everybody from Ashford who has spoken. I'm very heartwarmed by everybody coming together. And I wanted to say to vote no for zoning change and to keep it simple. Campanelli bought the property knowing what the zoning was and keep the zoning the same and say, Campanelli, congratulations for buying a piece of property. So now use it for something that it's zoned for. That's all I have to say. Well, I could say more, but that keeps it simple.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. I see I have Liz and Arthur Roberts next.
Good evening. So I'm a little bit concerned about trying to decoupling a lot of the folks' opinions here and things that they're speaking to from the text amendment. Obviously, the details have to do with the height of the building and the square footage, and there's probably other things I don't know about. But I would submit to you that everyone is here. They are indirectly talking about exactly those things, because obviously no one here, and as far as I can tell, no one in Ashford wants this thing to go in. And I have to ask, why is it one developer has all this power to get this in place when everyone, you know, I see all these stop the mega warehouse sign. I have yet to see one single pro mega warehouse sign. And so the people of Ashford are speaking, and I'm speaking. I say, absolutely do not want this. And you really need to consider that when you go to make judgment on this text amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I have Antoinette.
I'm Antoinette Calkins. I live on 1 Maple Drive in Ashford, which is Lake Chafee. I do want to say that I'm very opposed to this change in amendment. We're already getting noise pollution from Route 84, but I understand there's things we're not to talk about, but I want to talk about quality of life in Ashford. My daughter and my grandchildren both all live here in town, and I think we have a moral obligation to keep the rural aspect and keep the safety of our town preserved for our children and our grandchildren. My daughter lives closer to the highway than I do and closer to the building site than I do. I'm worried about the pollution, how it will impact my grandchildren, the noise pollution, the other environmentals. I'm worried about how it will pollute our lake that our children swim in. And I thank you for your time. I'll be brief. Thanks.
Thank you. Going on to Will, I believe Will Blake.
Thank you, Commissioner Silversmith. And I would first like to, I guess, express some respect for the members of the committee and the members of the community. We have some amazing people in town. And who would have ever known rural Ashford was full of PhDs, MBAs, lawyers, doctors, accountants. Of course we knew because we live here. But what I would like to speak to is changes to the zoning. And that the point is it can be done without zoning changes. There's no reason to have a building of 1 million square feet. When Ashford Realty Trust purchased their property in October 2020, or actually, I'm sorry, when they came in October 2020 and requested zoning changes, their primary point was they needed to do this because they couldn't market the property, nobody wanted it, it was undesirable, and that because of these reasons, they needed significant changing to the zoning laws to make this happen. Well, let me remind the commission and the landowners that 2 months after they purchased the property, Mainline Electric purchased property in the ID zone and respectfully developed it. They created a very successful business there, 591 Ference Road. They relocated their business from Stafford Springs, Connecticut. They built a highly scalable, highly successful business, the largest dealer of central boiler in the United States and Canada out of that location. They sold the business. 1 year before the applicant came 2 years ago, another company, Tool Max Design and Tool, purchased the 591 Ference Road property and relocated another highly successful business to the IID zone without any changes. They built they have a very highly successful business. It's high scale, and they pay very high wages with their business. So we have two transactions that have taken place for successful businesses operating in the IID zone without any changes to needing a larger building or needing a higher building or other changes as requested. So the premise of the whole argument is they need these changes because they can't market the property. And that's absolutely false. We have factual proof of two businesses. I'll add a third, Ashford Motel, if you want to throw that in. 3 businesses operating the IID zone without any changes required for that to happen. Just as a note, I spoke to the realtor who sold the 591 IID property. There was a contractor that was looking to relocate that I was doing some work with. And they told me at that time, this was before it closed, that multiple people were interested in that property. So if the developer developed the property responsibly the way they should have 17 years ago, the town would have earned over $3.5 million in tax revenue over that period of time. I propose that the landowners are blocking the town of Ashford from realizing any responsible development or earning any reasonable property taxes from that land. That's based on $25,000 in taxes paid by 8 businesses responsibly developed in that 96 acres over 17 years. Do the math, $3.4 million. And so the fact is there's no reason that the lack of ability to market new uses or building size are a barrier in any way whatsoever to the landowner to developing their property. I would respectfully ask the commission to deny the applications because they're not warranted in any way. And the premise of their application is completely false. Thank you very much. Blake Will, 436 Turnpike Road, Ashford, Connecticut. Been a resident here with my wife and kids for over 22 years. And I did attend business school a long time ago, so I learned a couple things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Moving on to Joseph Orphis.
Yep, it's here. Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button. Thanks for hearing me. I live at 18 Old Barrows Road in Union, Connecticut, so I won't take much time because I am an outsider here. But I live less than a mile away from that development site. We have a farm here. We raise beef, we raise kids, children, and vegetables. And so I sent a letter in about our personal concerns about it and farm concerns about it. But I'm joining in today because you're asking specifically about some of the concerns around the proposed regulations. And one thing that I have not heard that really I think should be considered on this is what's going to happen to a massive building like this in the long run. 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, 100 years from now, at some point the building is going to be obsolete. And one of the problems with major buildings like that, large scale buildings, is the maintenance cost. And there's not a lot of other uses for a building like that. So at some point, the town of Ashford is going to have to deal with a gigantic building that nobody's going to want anymore. And who's going to take it down? Who's going to prevent it from turning into blight? I think that's something that the commission should really consider. I'll also make my last point here because I want to be brief. It is a problem when you have industrial proposals like this that don't have a clear direction and somewhat might be eye in the sky. When we bought our farm, literally less than a mile away, the only thing you were allowed to do here was build a golf course. It was special industrial zone. Nobody could buy it. Nobody could do anything but build a golf course on it. And so what did the former owner do? He did everything but build a golf course, and it did a lot of this damage to the land, which we're trying to fix, and I've been trying to bring back into something productive. One thing I did when I bought the farm, and this developer could have done that when they bought the property, is put it on put a condition on their purchase price or their purchase contract. So they could have bought this property on the condition that the prior owner get the zone change so they could see it for the use they want to see it as. But they didn't do that. Instead, they bought it and they're trying to change it retroactively. And I think that's one thing that the people of the town of Ashford, I would hope, consider is there are ways that this person or this company could have bought the property and been savvy about their contracts as opposed to buying it and then trying to essentially force the town people to do something that they don't seem to want to do. I'll leave it at that. I appreciate you giving me some time, being that I do live in Union. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orcus. Moving on, I don't have a name. I have a Zoom user.
Ruth Cutler, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ruth.
Oh, good. I'm Ruth Cutler at 42 Pease Road, Ashford. I'm a little confused in what I'm to speak on because I went to this process a little bit late. In fact, I even had trouble getting on Zoom tonight. But what I am reacting to is the new postcard that was sent to probably every taxpayer in Ashford. And I found it very misleading, but what it did clarify for me is how big this thing is, this possible zone change, what it could allow. I had thought that the acreage in which would be disturbed would be less, but the postcard says it's a total of 52 acres to be disturbed. The building footprint, according to the postcard, would cover 25 acres. If you look at Lake Chaffee, that's 54 acres. Half of that is 25 acres. That's what your building site would be. That's huge. The postcard also photoshopped an image of the building from Route 84. And if you know that site, it's got wetlands on it. And there's also a setback between 84 and there's a highway, obviously, right of way that you cannot plant on. You can't plant white pine in wetlands. They don't like it. Red maple is not going to screen that building. You know, the building is going, or that footprint is 55 feet tall. There goes our nice rural gateway to Ashford. It's going to look basically like the ambience of a state prison when you go by it. The other thing is the postcard stated there'd be no discharge into wetlands, water courses, or groundwaters. With 50 acres of disturbance and 25 acres of impervious area, that water has to go somewhere. Naturally, in its undisturbed state, 50 acres and its surrounding land would have drained wetlands, filtering that water before it reached downstream. 1 inch of water upon 1 acre of land equals 27,000 gallons of water. Multiply that times 25. All of that water has to be corralled and put somewhere. What concerns me is in the process of funneling that water off of that 25 acres, it has to be contained and held somewhere. In holding that water, it has to be released. We have had storms that have had up to 5 inches of rain. That's a lot of water that's going to have to be contained. And they said there's no water is going to be discharged into wetlands, offsite, etc. My feeling is it's going to be pressurized and held and then released. That negates any natural process of filtering or slowing down water. That water is going to go downstream. It's going to erode the stream beds. And when that water finally slows down, it'll take all that silt and dump it into prime trout habitat. This is a huge disruption on that site. The other thing is that the fire chief mentioned there he had no problems with the site, but looking at the site, there is only one available access to a 25-acre building site with trucks coming in, trucks going out. If there ever a fire, an explosion, you've got fuel tanks, you've got God knows, we don't even know what's going to be in that building. How are you going to have fuel trucks, trailer trucks, going out, employees vacating the site, and emergency vehicles coming in? It's a huge risk. The site is inaccessible for an additional access because of steep slopes and wetlands. The postcard also states that the traffic.
Ruth, I need you to try and wrap up a little bit because you've exceeded the 3, but please wrap up.
Okay. All right, I will just say one more thing. In graduate school, I was taught the site dictates the use, designed to fit the site. This proposal goes far beyond the capacity of the site. And there's also no legal reason we have to make changes to the zone to fit one developer's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Kurt Hendinger.
Hello, how are you? Thank you very much
Very
for
well.
this opportunity. I am the former president of the Nabisatuck Watershed Council, which is a nonprofit that looks after the drinking water supply for Willimantic. And I have left the region. I live now at One Stage Road in West Hampton, Massachusetts. I served as a conservation and inland wetlands commissioner and chaplain for about 15 years. So what I would like to do is just to read into the record the statement from the Willimantic or the Wyndham Water Commission about this proposed project, because it will have a negative impact upon the raw surface drinking waters of Willimantic. And so any decision that you make as a commission is either going to be to continue the status quo of having non-industrial, low impact development in your town, or you're going to make a gigantic decision. And that is what Michael Turgeon, who's the superintendent.
Mr. Hendinger, I just asked you that we already have that. We have received that. It is part of the record, the public record right now, not to steal your thunder or anything. But again, that is already part of the full public record, and everyone has access to that. It has been reviewed by the commission.
Oh, good. Well, then do you have anything from the Department of Public Health commenting on this proposal?
I don't remember seeing anything submitted.
Okay. Have you requested anything from the Department of Public Health?
Not at this point.
Okay. Do you understand why you would request?
This again, Mr. Hendinger, this isn't a back and forth type thing. If you have a comment, please do. We will
Okay, so
have
my
other procedures in
Thank you very much.
place
Thank
because
you.
we really don't have anything as a site to deal with. We're really dealing with the text amendments, not what potentially could happen down the road. So, but thank you for your input. We really appreciate it. Thank you very
Well,
much.
I actually would like to just point out that the watershed issue should be considered as you go forward with whatever amendment that you propose. Because the water quality of the 3 branches of the Natchog River that feed Willimantic, they are supposed to improve in water quality. And so you need to understand that any proposal like this must improve the water quality according to the Department of Public Health. And that is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Margaret Welch.
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Margaret Welch. I live at 210 Amadon Road in Ashford. And as a bit of background, I spent an entire career at DEP as a land use analyst, and a good portion of my duties was to analyze zone change proposals for environmental impacts. I haven't had a lot of time I'm late to the party here, and I haven't had a lot of time to look at all of the environmental information that's available about the site, but based on what I knew back then, and I have been retired for 9 years, so things may have changed, but it's my understanding that the commission is under absolutely no obligation to approve a proposed zone change if it's not consistent with the plan of conservation and development, if there are concerns about quality of life of the residents, and if there's no clear demonstration that the project will benefit the town. And I believe in this case, the project will not benefit the town. And I urge you to decline the zone change based on the fact that you're not required to approve it. It doesn't appear consistent with the plan of conservation and development. And it will not improve the quality of life here in Connecticut. I thank you for listening. I thank all the commissioners for their volunteer duty, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Moving on to Larry and Leah Ching. You are muted.
Not now.
Okay, you're good.
My name is Larry Ching. I'm here with my wife, Leah Ching, and my neighbor, Mark Harnwell. We live at 55 and 71 Nath Road, respectively. I just wanted to add my public comment that I am strongly opposed to the text amendment. I can't imagine how anybody can believe that we are not going to have any traffic impact from such a development. I mean, there's already enough impact from the FedEx utility building in Wellington. I mean, going down Turnpike, I hit tractor trailers trying to go down that twisty road almost on a daily basis. I can't imagine the impact on all the side roads in Ashford as truckers try to figure out how, not using 84, they're going to get to Rhode Island or other places down south that 84 doesn't reach. It kind of boggles my mind that anybody thinks this is a good impact. Nobody's driven by the building that they're making in Charlton right now, which is half the size of the 1.1 million square feet that's currently being proposed. It's an eyesore. I mean, it does not look like anything like Charlton used to be. They've gone down the development path of trying to find a way to increase their tax base. And I think they chose wrongly, really. And it's not the only place that's done that. Rhode Island has done the same thing. If you look at the available warehouse space in Connecticut, there's already a glut. There are warehouses that are not being used. There's one in South Windsor that's about the same size as currently proposed. And it's been vacant for, I believe, 2 years on a constantly waiting basis of, yes, we are coming soon. There's no reason to build anything that big here. There's no customer that needs to be in a place that has no public utilities, no public water, no public anything, and probably insufficient power unless they spend megabucks to bring it in. So we are all strongly opposed to any text amendment that proposes to build such a facility in Ashford. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you very much for your input. Moving on to Lisa. Lisa, I believe you've spoken to us before a couple of times. Go right ahead.
I have. I'm just going to add real quick. Thank you very much for all your time, for all of this aggravation that all of this must be bringing to you and your families. I am strongly opposed to this. We have to take a stand for the environment at one point in our lives. And that's all I'm going to say. Please vote no on this. Please, please, please. And again, thank you so much. Really, I can't imagine what this has done to your lives over the past few months. So thank you.
Thank you. Going on to Amy.
Hello, I'm Amy Reno. I live at 73 Squaw Hollow Road in Ashford. And I may live on the other side of town, but I don't think you guys all realize maybe what impact tractor trailers have. Campanelli is saying they won't be going down our rural roads, but guess what? That is Route 89. It's Route 44. It's Route 74. They're state roads. So of course he's going to say that it's not going to impact our locals. Those are our locals. Squaw Hollow Road is Route 44. The speed limit in front of my house on Route 44 is 35 miles an hour. Every year when my kids were in school, the first day of school, there was an accident at my house because the school bus had to stop to pick up my kids. Cars rear end each other. You had to wait for state police to show up. You had to wait for fire department to show up. How's the fire department going to be, in all of these places at once in such a small town? It's not going to happen. State Police Troop C is going to be busy in the winter taking care of Route 84 and all of those accidents. I just don't think it's responsible of our fire department to go ahead and say they can cover everything. They're already covering the accidents over by Dollar General and the Cumberland Farms all the time. This may not be local roads to Campanelli, but 44 and 74, 89, they are our local roads, and those truckers will drive on them and they will not follow the speed limits, and neither will those warehouse workers going to and from their jobs all the time. The 100+ potential tractor trailer bays there, no, it's gonna ruin our roads. It's gonna ruin everything about our town, the litter, everything. Keep these things in mind. Keep these things in mind. Look at what just a little Dollar General at that intersection did and what happened at Cumberland Farms. It's gonna be worse with that warehouse. And, all of our futures are at stake, including who we're going to vote for in the fall. If this gets.
Amen.
Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. And Christine, I know we've had some input from you. I'm just going to reach out to the meeting room that's been set up in the town hall by some residents asking for special accommodations. So please, folks in the meeting room, if you have a mic available to you or at the computer to ask your question. I see a hand up.
Are you letting us go now?
I'm letting you go now. Please go right ahead.
All right, my name is Peter Ralston. I live at 39 Nagy Road, Ashford, Connecticut. Now, you've heard a lot of people talk about how this one, and I will focus on this one zoning requirement. The Campanelli's focused on changing 300-19 and the requirements for the building size and components of that particular zoning requirement. But as you've seen, there's a domino effect because by changing that 319, it affects all other zoning requirements. I mean, one of your zoning requirements actually spells out to protect the night sky. I mean, and there's all zoning requirements. There's other requirements that are part of 319, like section A, section B. So we've gone over that. So it's clear that you can't change one without the other. So again, if Campanelli is going to be requesting the zoning change for this particular zoning regulation, they have to go back and ask for the other ones too. And then also people have talked about a public vote on that. Well, I've submitted a zoning request modification, a text amendment, to add that to one of the regulations, which has already been filed, that right now the zoning board is under a 2/3 majority vote because there was a protest under another zoning law, I think 300-25. And when I submitted that, I was basically told it's not going to pass because it's a statute. So, and also on the question of what about when it affects the other zoning requirements or zoning regulations, I was also told, because I spelled that out in my letter to the zoning commission, how by changing this one zoning regulation 300-19, it affects these other regulations, and they would then need to be changed. The response to that was, well, those zoning regulations are not specific requirements. So now I'm very confused. So there's roughly 300, section 300, they're all zoning requirements. So what is the rubric that the zoning commission is using to deem which requirement, which zoning regulations are requirements and which are not requirements? And also which ones are statutes and which ones are not statutes? So as you said, you know, the town voting on this, that's against statute. Well, that's also part of the zoning requirement. So that one can't be modified, but this one can. So again, you know, by going down this road, you're opening up all these other avenues that have to be addressed. And I think you kind of shown it yourself that you tried to get people to just focus on that one particular zoning regulation change, but people are going to mention the other ones because the other ones are going to be affected. So then Campanelli needs to make an application for all of those other ones too. And I'll just close by saying too, that I appreciate the time and energy that the zoning commission has done to this. And I appreciate them giving us the opportunity to meet in public like we should be on a meeting like this of this magnitude. But also that, you know, 4 of your members will be up for re-election this fall. And also I would say the selectmen's should be on record for this too, what their position is on this. I know one of the selectmen has, the other 2, I don't know what their position is. And I've asked 2 times and gotten no response from all of them. So in closing, I just think that Campanelli, if they're going to request that particular zoning change, they have to submit requests for the other ones because the other ones will be impacted and violated, as other people have pointed out throughout this meeting and the other 2. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alston. Okay, we'll go to Christina Zebo.
Thanks, Jeff. 30 seconds. Christina Sebo, 91 Perry Hill Road, here for almost 40 years. I think the lack of an answer to my question at the beginning of this meeting is actually quite salient for the current issue. If the town can't clean up a single abandoned, burned out house 4 years after it burned, how on earth would the town deal with a huge commercial entity with high-paid lawyers? If this company gets their way and builds their monstrosity, as the largest taxpayer, they will own our town. Maybe we can change the name of the town from Ashford to Campanelli's Folly. Finally, I'm so proud of Ashford citizens. I've felt so much of a sense of community because of this tumultuous issue. And thank you to the commissioners for listening to all of us and Jeff for running spectacular meetings.
Thank you, Christine. Mr. Vidit.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak one more time. Just 3 points. Everyone should know that Toolmax, which is part of the Interstate Interchange Development Zone, and they are affected by this proposal, is totally against this proposal. So that's a very important thing to understand. 2, the traffic that will be generated from this proposal, I did another look at the gravity model that would identify what the traffic that would be going south. As much as 20% of all the traffic, both employee related and truck traffic, will be taking 89 south, whether it goes east to Providence or takes a loop down to New London. That's 20%. The previous analysis showed at least 167 trips based on a 15% threshold. So rather than 167 trips per day of trucks, it'll be a factor more than that, probably in the order of 200 trips or more. Finally, with those trucks going down that road, I've done noise dosimeter measurements and looked at what residential standards are. And every single residence on Route 89 South, everything within 400 feet will have noise standards or noise exposures above the residential standard set by the Housing and Urban Development Agency, the federal agency, of the 55 decibels, which is a residential noise standard. So that's because trucks can be anywhere from 87 to 100 decibels. but the attenuation factor, it takes at least 400 feet for that attenuation of noise. So we're talking seriously about noise issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vidic. And Nick,
Hey, Nick Tello, 49 Myrtle Road in
I'm sorry, what was your last name again?
Tello, Tella.
Thank you.
Willington, Connecticut. I just wanted to take a minute here and just wanted to read one thing because, you know, obviously you guys know what we had to deal with here. I just wanted to reference what our board had to say here. And give me 2 seconds. Sorry. As I find it here. All right. So Andrew Marco for our planning and zoning stated that it deserved additional discussion and such. And Walter had stated the findings were that the size, scale, and use were inappropriate. And the POCD was mentioned often in Wellington, and I'm sure it's very similar to what Ashford is looking at too. And our chair here even said that the findings were, like I said, inappropriate. Walter had also read some of the findings, and he stated the size, scale, and use were not consistent with the POCD. And he elaborated on this point. He noted the overwhelming outcry from the public against this. Mr. Slater is also mentioned in these minutes, and Mike Tomato. So in closing, I just want to let you know that, you know, precedent next door in Wellington has already been set in forth. And I hope you guys take in consideration what we had to deal with and what they found in their findings. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Let me just zip through here in case people aren't raising their hand and someone is waving. How about Mr. Sharapone?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, I joined late. I don't know what much of the prior discussion was. I just wanted to share some experience I had when I worked for Pfizer. For those of you who may not remember, when Pfizer struck a deal with the town of New London to build a facility that would be tax-free for 10 years. And not surprisingly, 9 years and 11 months into that deal, they said, bye-bye, New London, we're out. Big companies have, you know, they have ways of doing things that seem.
Lost you, Joe. Sorry about that. Just lost the connection entirely. You don't see him, do you, Mike?
He's frozen on my end.
Okay. All right. Having come to the end of what I see as the public comment, I would like to, again, I switched it up a little bit. I'd like to turn it over to the commissioners for any questions they have. Again, thank you all for your public comment. We really do appreciate it. It all has been taken in by the commissioners. Anything that has been submitted either has been or will be reviewed by each and every one of the commissioners before any action is taken place. And at this point, I turn it over to the commissioners to ask any questions of the applicant in regards to either the comment that's been read to us or shared with us, the changes, revisions to the original application, anything, any clarification you need before we come to the end, allow the applicant to speak and possibly come to the end of our public hearing here. Jerry, did you have something?
Yeah, I have a question. Are they aware of what our resident geologist talked about with the problem with the stone that's underneath that piece of property? The problems that it can cause with cement?
I guess I would ask Attorney Nuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, our engineer, Kurt Properina, is aware of the subsurface material. It is not an issue for us. I mean, certainly it's not a relevant consideration with regard to the regulation amendment. I don't think that we want to get into the details. I mean, certainly when we apply for a building permit, those sorts of things have to be vetted. We'd be happy to get into those details and as part of a special permit application as well. But we are aware of the subsurface condition of the property. We're comfortable with it, and we would be prepared to move forward, given that condition. And we're very confident that a building of 1.1 million square feet can be built in a manner that is with an entirely balanced site, not bringing any material on or off site.
Thank you. Anything else from the commissioners? Seeing nothing on my screen here. We will open it up to any closing comments by the applicant and Attorney Nuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know if there's, I just want to say, I don't know if there's anything for you to respond to here if you feel, but I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, we won't be long, Mr. Chairman. I want to introduce first Stephen Rodolakis, who I think you all know. He's the principal of Ashford Realty Trust. He just wants to address you for a few moments, and then I'll give you some closing comments. Stephen?
Commissioners, thank you for your time. This is Steve Rodolakis. I've been the owner of most of the property that is the subject of this application since 2006. I've been investing in real estate since right out of high school in 1979, starting with 3 deckers in my hometown of Worcester. I'm not someone who flips real estate, but I'm a long-term holder. Most of my holdings I have owned in excess of 20 years. I, like you, have also served on my town's planning board in Massachusetts since 1999. So I understand what it's like to make decisions that impact the future of a community, even decisions that may not be popular with the abutters or opponents. But decisions on planning or zoning are based upon the town's bylaws and state law and shouldn't be popularity contests. For me, the primary reason these parcels interested me many years ago was the proximity of the same and easy access to Route 84. Initially, I thought these properties would be good for retail development and did in fact receive some preliminary interest. However, shortly after I closed on my purchase, the Great Recession hit, which essentially curtailed any interest in development of these sites. After the Great Recession and with the rise of e-commerce, there was still little appetite by prospective retail tenants for bricks and mortar locations, particularly for sites like this, where there is no significant population base from which to draw upon. So also, if your household is anything like mine, which I suspect it is, you frequently return home to find numerous packages on your front stoop. So I guess we all have blood on our hands with respect to the demise of traditional retail developers. Over the past few years, I've been approached by gas stations and truck stop users. However, I never really pursued the same, as I didn't think it was a good fit for these parcels. But like me, these users were attracted to significant traffic counts on Route 84, as well as the layout of the interchange. Back in 2012, I was approached by a wind farm developer, Pioneer Green, about siting some wind turbines along the northern border of these parcels, as well as some other property owned by a third party in Union. We met with town officials and some members of your legislative delegation about this project, which would have brought in fairly significant tax revenue to the town, in addition to being a model for a land-based East Coast wind energy project. In furtherance of this wind project, in 2013, Pioneer Green appeared before your commission for permission to erect what's known as a Met Tower to measure the wind speeds to confirm the suitability of the site. Your commission denied this request and the wind developer went away. In 2020, on my own, I decided to pursue a zoning amendment to allow for warehousing and distribution. After a few hearings, your commission denied the requested text amendment, essentially citing a lack of information about any potential project, but assured me the commission was going to take up amendments to the IID zone to facilitate development. I respected the commission's decision at that time. In fact, following the commission's denial of the 2020 requested text amendment, I appeared at your very next public hearing, I believe in January of 2021, as to what the next steps for zoning relief would be, and again was told the commission would be working on them as well as reaching out to me. After 2 years had passed without hearing anything, I decided to partner with a respected regional developer, Campanelli Development, who I have known for over 40 years and worked with in development of land I owned in nearby Uxbridge, Massachusetts. In my opinion, Uxbridge shares many similarities with the town of Ashford. I'm not certain whether the commission members had an opportunity to visit the Uxbridge project or speak with the Uxbridge town officials, but I am certain if they did, they would hear nothing but positive reviews. The Uxbridge development has been an economic game changer for the town, just like this potential project could be for Ashford. I believe that the Campanelli team has assembled and provided the commission with the information that you felt was lacking in the 2020 application, such that you can reasonably support the text amendments to the zoning bylaw. Again, you're not approving a project, but providing them a vehicle which to propose a project through a special permit application, which you then can evaluate on its merits. Finally, I would note that these properties have been continuously been marketed for sale or lease since 2006 when I bought them. For the past 10 years with a national firm of Cushman and Wakefield's Hartford office, with little interest other than for a wind project or truck stops. The current zoning amendments would put the town in a position to consider an environmentally responsible and revenue positive project. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Stephen. Just two quick preliminary comments, Mr. Chairman. I think we've put to bed with our memo that we submitted last week, as well as Attorney Slater's memo with regard to the commission's ability to modify a proposed regulation amendments. The question is whether or not any changes affect the fundamental character of that regulation. In our case, we've made them more restrictive than what we submitted earlier. So I don't think there's any question as to your ability to change the regulation as we originally proposed it, as we propose it now, or even if you were to come up with other conditions or other requirements that you want to add to the regulation, you have that ability, and I would refer you to your esteemed Land Use Council, Attorney Slater, if you have any questions about that. As to whether or not you can be deposed, I would also refer you to Attorney Slater. On a zoning regulation amendment application or any zoning regulation appeal, the likelihood of a commission member being deposed is exceedingly rare, and the courts would have to give approval for that. So I would put that in the fear-mongering category. So with regard to our closing comments, it feels like the hearing on this, what is a regulation amendment, has really been derailed by a barrage of speculation and what ifs that pertain exclusively to subsequent applications and misinformation related to those what ifs. And that's why our experts spent a long time at the last hearing describing what the process will be going forward, the type of materials and other evidence that we'll need to supply, how those requirements apply to our property, and how every component of the project will be scrutinized by you, the Wetland Commission, your consultants who will be paid by us, and other regulatory agencies. I would encourage the commission to re-review section 300-26C3B with regard to what outside consultants that would be engaged by you and paid for by us can consider, And then as well as all the special permit criteria with regard to all the things that had been brought up by the opposition that's found in section 300-23. Our expert testimony demonstrated that the proposed development must be environmentally safe and then must comply with a host of state and local regulations, or else it doesn't get built. If we obtain all those other permits, you are assured that development will have no negative impacts on the immediate area or the region by reason of stormwater, septic, traffic, water usage, lighting, or noise. So we want to get away from the what ifs that are only relevant to subsequent applications and put this application back into some perspective. First, as I said in January, the proposed changes are a very modest update to the existing IID regulations, but they will result in a substantial upside for the town of Ashford. Again, these are only changes to the IID regulations. All the other requirements that we heard about tonight will still be applicable to any project that comes forward under the new regulations. The primary difference between the existing regulations and the proposed regulations has little to do with what can be constructed or what the impacts will be, because both the existing regulations and our proposed regulations allow for over 1 million square feet of building footprint, and no one has disputed that. All of the issues that we have heard about, traffic, stormwater, impacts to wells, impacts to watershed, apply equally to a project under the existing IID regulations as they do to a project under our proposed changes. Other than preserving more open space, the primary difference between the existing and proposed regulations is simply that under the proposed regulations, something could actually be constructed. Second, don't be misled by those who recommend that you deny this application and go back to the drawing board again. Let's look at the history Stephen just took you through. You created the IID regulations. When nothing happened on the property, the town considered the lack of interest in the zone in its POCD and encouraged, quote, large-scale industrial businesses. The property owner also sought approval of a regulation amendment, which was denied. And during both the deliberations for that application and in a subsequent meeting, the commission engaged in a very thoughtful dialogue about the IID regulations, such as the need to update them, how to simultaneously promote business interests in the zone while being respectful of the environment, whether the bulk requirements for the IID on the east side of 84 should be different from those on the west, whether the required setbacks make sense in the zone given the surrounding land uses, and how to determine what the visual impacts might be from a development in the zone. We have answered all of those questions. No. To the extent that you feel that we have not, or that you want to discuss further changes to the regulations, which is now clear you can do, we're here tonight. You have a full team of experts at your disposal to work with you. We encourage you to use our team as a resource. Even if you want to include a provision regarding noise or anything else you've heard about, you can do so. But don't be misled by those who claim that they are not anti-development and that they want economic development, and in the same breath tell you to deny the very regulation amendments that will enable the only viable development for this property. They are offering a false choice because what they really want is for this property to remain as open space. And so their goal is to create regulations that will ensure nothing of any substance will be built, which is directly contrary to the guidance found in your POCD. Third, some more perspective that bears repeating. The IID zone comprises 1/2 of 1% of the town's total land area in a remote corner of the town, direct access onto I-84, but you can't get to the property directly from the town, which is a good indication of just how remote it is. As we've said, the potential tax revenue from that 1/2 1% will have a positive impact on 100% of the town. It could bring in 10% of the town's total budget. We heard from farm owners who are concerned about the rising real property taxes and how they may be driven from their preferred way of life because of taxes. New tax revenue from this tiny corner town will help promote and preserve existing farms in town. And that tax windfall can be accomplished in a manner that preserves more open space than your regulations currently require. Fourth, you should consider what happens next if this application is denied. That's a legitimate question. It's not a threat or a challenge. In fact, given the town's past discussions about the IID zone, it is a reasonable planning inquiry as you consider the future of this property. As a preliminary matter, if the application is denied, the board will have denied it based exclusively on irrelevant or incorrect information and having ignored the only expert testimony in the record. What will not happen is that my clients will simply allow the property, which is zoned for large-scale commercial, to remain as open space. If after going through its POCD process, denying the last application, pondering how to revise the regs, and then to reject this application, my clients will not just wait for the next iteration of the IID regulations, which, if the opponents have their way, will effectively prohibit any meaningful developments. What will happen is that my clients will pursue opportunities that either do not require your approval or curtail your oversights, and we will pursue those instead as our next step. But to be clear, the motel will no longer be part of any future development. The motel will stay. My clients will pursue developing the 10-acre Maury Pond property in Union instead of preserving it as open space. And I want to be very clear, that path is not our preference. As I stated when we opened the hearing, we want our process for the town to be one of collaboration and partnership. We embrace the challenge that's recognized in your POCD. And it is still our intention and our pledge that we will work with the town, its commissions, and the public in an open, candid, constructive, and respectful manner to realize the town's vision. That's what we want. And it's not too late to start. So we very much want to hear from you. As your POCD notes, the IID zone, quote, presents an excellent opportunity for recruiting commercial and industrial uses with minimal impact of farmland, forest, and residential properties in interior portions of town. Now, keep in mind, we removed the industrial use from the proposed regulation. Second, your POCD also says, quote, the Interstate 84 interchange will provide needed diversity and surety in Ashford's tax base while growing economic opportunity by permitting the operation of large-scale industrial buildings as well as complementary commercial activities compatible with the rural character of town. Those quotes, your POCD either mean something or they don't. We believe that you mean that you meant what you said when you wrote those words in your POCD. We would love to work with you. We'd love to hear from you in terms of what we can do with the regulations. We'd love to have the application approved in its current form. If there's something else we can answer, if there's a tweak that you want to make, if there's an expert you want to hear from, if we can reassure you on the process that we would have to go forward with once this application is approved, we would be more than happy to do that. We would be more than happy to continue the hearing if we can answer other questions that the commission members have. But I don't want to get into the process of responding to a lot of speculation with regard to applications or criteria that are going to be relevant to future applications. This is as I said, a very modest modification of your existing regulations. It is your charge to, as we heard earlier from one of the members of the public, the statute says you must consider the POCD. You don't have to be follow it to the letter, but you must consider it. But your decision must be consistent with a comprehensive plan. Given the very modest changes, given the fact that we are proposing more open space in response to greater building heights, the fact that you can increase taxes into the town and give tax relief to every member of the town, every property owner in town, indicates that this is in the best interest of the entire town, of the town of Ashford. So as I said, my clients are here, our full team is here. We'd be happy to answer any questions. I'd leave it to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Attorney Neff. At this point in time, I think we will close the hearing at this point and move on to our potential deliberations for this meeting. And I would say that, again, very important information from both sides. We thank you for your time. We thank you for the information regarding the application. Obviously, if you have any questions or anything, we will reach out to you and your experts to gain that. And we're just going to look for a motion to close the hearing at this point.
Jeff, this is Mark Schnobel. Before we close the hearing, may I ask one question of Attorney Nuff?
Absolutely.
My one question is in regard to the retaining wall, removing the setback requirement on retaining walls and our current regulations. And, you know, looking at the geography of the land, I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to hear the reasoning behind that.
It was really just a clarification of your existing regulations. The regulations currently are not specific with regard to whether or not a retaining wall has to comply with the setback requirement or not. And so we wanted to, you know, in an excess of caution, make sure that that was part of this regulation. You may want to consider that for all your other zones. But it wasn't entirely clear based upon your definitions. I mean, it's been a while since I looked at it, but the question of whether or not a retaining wall is a structure or not, it was really more of a, I would say, an academic exercise, but we just want to make it very clear because obviously retaining walls will be required and we want to make sure that that was covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff, this is Dick. Along the same lines, the major, and I'm confused as to what is on the table and what has been proposed as modifications by the applicant. The applicant has gone down from 75-foot height to 55 and has asked to increase the size of the building up to 1.1 million. And the applicant has also put forth the change in the language of permitted special occupancies. There is other language that was put in that dealt with setbacks. Is that still on the table?
Yes, it is.
Is that it seemed to be coming to me from left field. Is that something that is important? Why wasn't it included in the first application?
The change to the setbacks was included in the application that was submitted in January, December of this year. The only changes that have been made to the original application is to further confine what it is that we proposed. So as you said, we eliminate some uses, particularly anything that would generate more traffic, such as a Amazon facility that would be making last mile sort of deliveries to local residents. We eliminated the possibility of industrial facilities. We eliminated any facility that would have hazardous substance as a primary use. We reduced the proposed maximum height from 75 feet in the original proposal down to 55 feet. And we put a cap of 1.1 million square feet, whereas our original application did not have a cap of any kind on the total square footage of the footprint of the building. So the setback issue has always been part of the regulation change.
Okay, that was not clear to me with the initial application, but I'll take that for advisement and we will have a chance to talk about that more when the commission discuss this.
Anything else from the commissioners?
Motion to close the hearing.
Jerry motions to close. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Dick Williams seconds it. All those in favor of closing the hearing?
I believe Mark and I still had our hands up, Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see that. Sorry. Go right ahead. We just have a second motion. Go ahead, Luther.
This is just a question for guidance, and if it's inappropriate, I'm happy to withdraw it. I don't know if this is something that you can answer or if we need our legal counsel to answer this for me. For the commission, in consideration of all of the information that has been presented, we've had the applicant give us a really great representation of experts to present the facts of their application and the impacts as they see it. We've also had significant public comment, and several of the public that have commented have indicated their own expertise. And I guess I'm looking for guidance as we move into our next phase of this process as to how is the commission supposed to recognize or weigh the expertise of public comment. My understanding is that the applicant, must present factual, best known evidence as part of their application, because if they don't, it would potentially impact their ability to get a permit down the road. And I just don't know how to balance the competing expert witness against each other.
So could you put that into a form of a question, Alex?
So are we to weigh the public comment experts as heavily as the applicant provided experts?
Mr. Chair, this is Ken Slater.
Yes, please go ahead, Ken.
Do you want me to comment on that now? Because I can indicate that that is advice and guidance that I can give the commission after the close of the public hearing.
I prefer to do that during deliberations, yes.
Yeah, Jeff,
Is that okay with you, Luther?
I'm always happy to get that sort of advice. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Hang on, Dick. Mark had his hand up.
Yeah, I just have a brief question, and that was on the change in the amendment from 75 feet to 55 feet. Again, in research, prior to the original hearing and during the hearings, for warehouse space, clear span height of 36 and 40 seem to be quite common in this country. And I believe Attorney Nuff mentioned at the first hearing that you need 12 feet above whatever you want for clear height or roofing and truss systems, which, in my math comes to 52 feet. So I'm just wondering where the 55 feet.
Sure. I mean, what we'd indicated at the last meeting when we had proposed the reduction in height from 75 to 55 is that there is a universe of users out there that would prefer a building height of 75 feet. But that's as an accommodation to the concerns and comments that we heard from the commission and the public, we agreed to reduce it to 55 feet. So the 75 feet was not something that we pulled out of thin air. There are a number of users who require a building of that height, but as an accommodation, and obviously we would be winnowing down the opportunities of potential users, but we felt that it was a worthwhile trade-off of helping improve the likelihood of getting the regulation amendment passed, while at the same time eliminating some potential users. So that was the calculus that we went through in reducing that height. And we think that there is a fair number of users still out there who would can utilize a building height of 55 feet, resulting in as you said, once you remove the 4 feet at the base because of the loading docks and then the truss systems and the sprinkler systems, it does reduce the overall clear heights. As I said, we're confident that we can find a user with a total building height of 55 feet.
So I guess my question is, again, in my research, I was looking at, warehouse structures that 36 feet and is the most common in this country for clear height, and 40 is becoming common. And if my math's correct, that would be a requirement of 52 feet. Am I inaccurate, or is that correct?
Well, I don't, I understand that you've conducted some of your own research, and this is one of the things we talked about at the last meeting. If to the extent that there are commission members doing their own research, would like to be able to see that and comment on it. But yes, we believe 55 feet does create a better envelope for us in terms of finding a user. I don't think that a reduction of 3 more feet is going to have an appreciable benefits to, the few people who will see it as they drive along 84. If you would like us to, we could pull up the photo simulations again of the 55-foot building. And I think what you'll see is that it is significantly shielded by existing vegetation, by topography, and the fact that there are very few residential neighbors that are directly adjacent to the property.
Thank you.
Dick, you had something you were wanting to share or ask? If you're on mute.
My connection keeps on fluctuating. I don't know if
Okay.
it's just me or you guys, but the one thing that I would say is that whatever was submitted in terms of setbacks with the initial application should be what we consider going forward, not a revision to that. I can buy into the change in height and the change in square footage and the change in occupancy. I won't talk about it in this point, but I was the author of a lot of this, and I can talk about what the rationale was when we have our commission meetings, but I won't put that on the record here. So in summary, I think we should consider of the applicant what was originally proposed in terms of setbacks and the like, not anything that's changed from that.
Well, their original submission had the setbacks in it. The
Right.
request for setbacks in it, as I believe I'm correct, Attorney Nuff?
Correct. So, just as a refresher,
Yeah, section,
section D1, which is
Yes,
the
thank
table. So we are changing the side and rear setbacks up to 20,000 feet from 100 feet to, I'm sorry, to 50 feet. Just a flat 50 feet, regardless of the size of the building. 75 feet for buildings between 20,000 square feet and 250,000 square feet. And then greater than 250,000 square feet, not to exceed 1.1 million, is 100 feet, except that 200 feet shall be provided from any side or rear lot line shared with an adjacent residential or agricultural use. And as I said, again, we can go back to the maps that we showed you very early on in the process, but our abutting neighbors are the state of Connecticut and ourselves. That's it. So we felt that under those conditions, it was appropriate to make modest reductions in the setbacks that are required.
Okay, so I am to understand that your revised application does not change anything with the setbacks.
Correct. So, I'm going to belabor this to make sure it's clear for everybody. Our original application did propose amendments to the setbacks as compared to the existing regulations. When we came back to you with some modifications in response to the comments that we heard, we made no changes to the setbacks from our original application.
Okay, I stand corrected in that it seemed to have been a lot of discussion of that that was a little ambiguous, but if we're not changing that, we're only changing the height, the occupancy, and the square footage. That is the essence of the application.
That's the essence of the revised regulation, correct? Mr. Chairman, if you want us to bring up the application, we can share it with you. I mean, if you feel that would be helpful, we can certainly do so.
well, I'm just thinking we're limiting, what you're, because again, in your regulations or in your original application, you do have changes to the setbacks themselves.
Correct. Yes.
Included in those setback changes is the inclusion of retaining walls as an exception to the setback restriction.
That was in the original one as well.
Correct.
And,
The original and in the modified.
Right, so that has not been the setback requirements have not been modified since the original application was submitted in December or January.
Correct. Okay. Is that clear, Dick?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we were considering the application as it stands now.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else from the commission? Mark, you have a hand up again?
Nope, forgot to lower it.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second on the floor to close the public hearing. It's just easier with everyone on. I'm just gonna go through the list I have here. Jerry,
Yes.
Jeff Schillinger,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Catherine, do you still show her, Mike?
She just unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here.
Okay, we're looking to vote on whether we close the public hearing at this point.
Yes.
Nord,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes,
Mark,
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Yes, okay, it is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. All those in attendance. We will move into our regular commission meeting. Back in 2. And in doing that, we are simply going to, Mike, is this correct on the agenda that B falls into a public hearing also?
Yes, that is a public hearing, but I have not had any follow-up from the applicant, so I'm going to ask that you table this application to the next meeting.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt very briefly.
Please.
Were you planning to, is the commission planning to deliberate on the matter that was just a subject of the public hearing tonight, or is that going to be deferred to a future meeting? I wasn't sure whether you wanted me to stick around or come back for your next meeting when you can deliberate it. And if you don't know right now, I'll stand by.
I would say I would like to, if we do get into any deliberation on that, and I can't say yes or no at this point, I would like to, instead of having to get you back on or something, get your input from Luther's request.
Yeah, well, then I'll sit tight. If you think that might be tonight, I'll sit tight.
Okay, thank you. And I'll let you go as soon as I can find out.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
yeah, Jeff, this is Dick. In light of the fact that we have been doing marathons, I would say that we should defer deliberative aspect of this application to the next meeting, and that can be next week.
Well, we have a number of items already on for our special meeting to get through. So let's get down to it into our business, and then we'll deal with what its status is. Okay, Dick?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we can deal with that's pretty straightforward on the list of items that we've been deferring.
Right. Well, I just need to get through the business at hand, and then we can get to the discussion on the new business on what we're going to do, as opposed to making a discussion now out of sync on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we've tabled that. Now we move on to the, well, just simply the PZ 2-23-3. We're looking to continue this for a special meeting scheduled for the 17th, next Monday. Correct, Mike?
That's correct.
Okay. And that also will include PZ-23-4, application for a short-term rental. to our special meeting on the 17th also.
Yep.
Correct.
And the PZ-23-5 on a one lot re-subdivision application of 285 Turnpike for our special meeting on the 17th also.
Yes, and so I just want to clarify, just in case there are others here for those applications. These are special permits that require public hearings based upon the regulations, given how long these meetings have been going and the level of attendance, in an effort to just try to keep things split up. Those applications were run and noticed for hearings tonight, but because we're trying to keep things sort of separate and organized, we're going to continue those applications specifically to the 17th. So we can deal with those matters at the special meeting and keep this application sort of charted on the regular meeting schedule, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right, moving on to unfinished business. And again, in order to have some brevity and move forward, I would ask for a motion to table the discussion on definition of primary residence.
So moved.
From
Second.
Jerry. Seconded
Second
by
from
Dick.
Dick.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposition? Abstention? Thank you. Okay, so that leads us to new business, such as the discussion on the PZ-23-1. So to that point, what I would like to do is for the discussion with Ken, and we can open this up, but obviously we don't need to make a decision on this at this point. I would like to discuss the Luther's point, about weighing of expert testimony versus non-vetted testimony. Ken, is that something you want to weigh in on for us?
Absolutely. First of all, I'll preface that question can differ a bit on the kind of application that you have. Just note that what you have is a legislative, you're sitting in your legislative capacity, you're making the rules. That's where you have the broadest kind of discretion. And you think of the legislature, when the legislature decides whether or not it wants to change the speed limit on a state highway, or all state highways, it can hold hearings, it can hear, from people, but it's given a lot of latitude into the way, its consideration of these kinds of policy issues, because that's what this really is. It's a regulation that would change the policy set forth in your regulations. So experts who testify in public hearings of the legislature or before a public hearing, in this case, in your capacity as legislators, is not the same kind of expert testimony that is provided if there were a very technical question before your commission on a development plan. If there was a question, for example, in how a stormwater system, whether or not it's properly designed to meet the requirements of a 25-year storm, and an applicant's consultant with expertise testifies that it was properly designed, and a consultant that was engaged by someone opposed to the plan, also credentialed with expertise, provides testimony as to why it will not properly function under a 25-year storm. You act like a jury would if, in a medical malpractice case, one doctor testified that the surgery was performed perfectly properly, and another doctor testified that it was not. The jury's not made up of doctors, but the jury's job would be to listen and decide which of the experts were more credible. So in that context, you really would be dealing with a balancing of the credibility of competing experts. And there's also some instances in which, and this comes up more in the wetlands environment, where maybe there's only one expert who's testified and is testified regarding a technical matter that's beyond the normal expertise of a commission, which is impact on a wetland. There's some case law that the commission would have to defer to the judgment of that expert. coming back to this application, this is not that kind of application. You're dealing with a policy consideration. You should take into consideration all of the evidence that you heard and given it the value that you think is appropriate for whether the application should be approved, denied, or you have the ability to amend the language as long as it doesn't fundamentally change the nature of the language as it was proposed. So you evaluate them, you find which ones are more credible, but you do have a lot of latitude in deciding who you want to rely on and deciding whether or not to change the policy of the town in your capacity of making the rules. Does that help?
Jeff, if I can jump in, I don't choose to put my doctorate in front of my name, but I do have a doctorate in engineering.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Harvey, can you put on mute? Thank you.
Yep. Jeff, this is Dick. I don't choose to put the fact that I have a doctorate in engineering and that I have 20 years of experience in the insurance industry. Those are things that I bring to the commission. There's many things I've heard tonight that I would find to be very debatable. And those are things that we can talk about when we have a deliberation. But I would not consider some of the things, and the one that, there's a number that came up, but one that hit me up in particular was the liability issue about lawsuits against the town and against the members and depositions. I have a lot of experience in that area, and I don't see any of that as something that we would want to embrace as expert testimony in terms of our deliberation. I think if we want to embrace anything for expert testimony, we should bring in our own experts and not rely on the public as experts.
I can see what you're saying there, Dick. And yeah, I would say if there's something we need to get even a independent opinion on, non-biased opinion on something that really vexes the commission member that has what they have a question about, yeah, we should look into dealing with what's available to us from either an engineering standpoint, geology standpoint, whatever it is that we have a consideration on. But again, I mean, I think a lot of the testimony that's been given is beyond the pale. It's information that is not in direct consideration when it comes to the text amendment itself and what we have to make our decision on when it comes to our current regs as they sit, the POCD and zoning map, those types of things that are really the true items for consideration. I do think that even the applicant kind of, again, I've said this before, opened up that door when it came to looking at potential uses of the site or potential development going in there. It allowed people to run wild, if you will, with those thoughts and what could or could not be in there. I mean, it could be a data center that goes in there. Data center is going to be pretty quiet overall, but we don't know right now because we don't know who a potential applicant is for going into the site to the developer itself. So
yeah,
I
Jeff,
don't think we have to get into a lot of those issues when it comes to the expert testimony, besides the fact of how it applies to our regs, to our POCD, and the implications thereof.
Yeah, Jeff, I couldn't agree with you more. What I was trying to do is address some of the concerns that Luther had brought up as far as accepting some of the public comments as expert testimony. And we can get into debating those. And if we find that there is issues that we need additional input, I would be much more comfortable having the commission expend its own funds to bring in an expert on those subjects.
We also have the access of the engineer from NECOG, and again, we have
Right.
some resources available to us.
And you folks are talking about in the end, once an actual development plan is presented
Right.
and you have those kinds of details, and that's when the sort of the battle of the expert I was talking about before really comes in. Right now at this policy level, it's just you're going to gather all of this information, including information that could come from experts, and determine what you think to be relevant to adopt the policy or not. So
yeah, it's like you said, it's weighing the two doctors' testimony about the same procedure as opposed to, getting technical information.
right, and then you could get your own independent evaluation of an application. I just want to make it clear that in this particular case, the hearing's closed. You were talking about potentially getting an expert in the context if something were approved. When the time comes that an actual development application comes before you, that's when you get your own expertise, and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I specifically had fought to put into regulations the requirement that anyone that comes in with a special application put up 1% of the value of the property being proposed, or $50,000, whichever is greater, and that the commission would have the ability to use those monies to hire experts that could help evaluate that application. So when we have a real application instead of hypothetical applications, we can evaluate those items much more explicitly.
Okay, very good. I don't see any hands. What I'd like to do is ask the commission members themselves how they would like to handle the further, I can't think of the word now. It must be late. Further discussion when it comes to the amendment text. Mike, we have ability to warn this for our next meeting, actually our special meeting still?
So the hearing closed tonight, so you have 65 days from tonight to issue a decision. Frankly, the reason we have deferred the other applications is because we didn't want to have this application mixed up with all of those other public hearings. So I think my preference and the preference from all of those applicants would be that we keep the special meeting for those applications and deal with this at the next regular meeting. The public hearing notice for the special meeting has already run. Granted, this would not be a hearing, but because the hearing is just closed and we received a revised protest petition with a separate amendment to that.
We're still waiting to vet that. Yes, correct.
So the commission can certainly deliberate tonight, but and Ken can tell me if he disagrees, but I would ask you not issue any decisions so that we can fully evaluate that and what type of vote is required before you issue a decision.
Right. So, and again, to get that fully vetted in time, we're looking for more than next Monday or whatever it is, potentially.
And though the hearing is closed and we're not receiving any new information, there were several things that came in today and throughout the weekend. And so I think providing the opportunity for us to get those posted so the commission can see what that is, having that just for next week is kind of a short turnaround.
Got it. Okay, so what's on the table again is to table discussion on PZ 23-1 until our next scheduled meeting for May. Do I have a motion on that?
I would move that.
Mark Schnobel.
I'll second it then.
Okay, Mark Schnobel,
I'll second
the
it, Jeff.
motion, and Richard Williams with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We will table that to our May 8th meeting.
good night, folks. I'll see you at that meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ken.
Ken, thank you for your input. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'll see you soon.
Okay, so the last item on the zoning is the, excuse me, I'm sorry, Janet.
I'm sorry. I just want a clarification. Now that the public hearing is closed, we would no longer accept any public comments
Correct,
in meeting as well. So
correct.
what's come in today will be the end of it.
It will be the end all and be all. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. So the zoning officers report, Mike, do you have anything?
No, I do not have anything new to update.
Okay, well, thank you. So we will adjourn. Again, the intent for next week's meeting is a special meeting to deal specifically with a number of these hearings that we have moved to that special meeting. We were falling a bit behind on our application, so we want to make sure that we're back up to speed and meeting the needs of these requests. So it should not be a late night, as no one let me add in more deliberations for this onto that meeting. So again, I appreciate your attendance. I appreciate your attention. And please take the time to review any of the new material that has been submitted for the text amendment, and looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Jerry, second? Second from Alex. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And
Jeff.
Good night,
And-
everyone.